Hi Anuradha, namaste.
Hi, namaste, namaste.
It's a toss-up between signal and light.
Okay.
Namaste, Mahadaya.
Namaste. Kushalam.
Salam.
Shantanuji, Kushalam.
Sarvam Kusalam. Dhanyavada.
Mahan Santosha. We've got a few Sanskrit Pandits also on the group to guide us down the line.
Bahu Uttamam. Including Binaji.
No, Vinayji is not there. Vinayji is not there. There's somebody else who's there as a host.
Achha. It showed his name.
Yes, yes. But that's my friend Sundareshan who's come in as a host.
Achha.
Namaste to everybody.
Namaste. Namaste, Shraddha.
Namaste. Namaskar.
Namaste, Anuji.
Namaste. Namaste.
So it's Kushalam or it is Kushalam?
Lam. Kushalam. I'll explain that.
Hi.
Hello, Anuradha.
Anjali.
Namaste, Anu.
Hi Anu.
Oh, Uttamam. Very fine, thank you. Now, I don't know if there are more Anus in the group, but I'm answering in any.
I'm sure there are.
Exactly. It's such a common one.
Anu, there are only 213 people on this group.
Only. We are hoping to hold everybody tight. We are hoping to keep everybody closely bound.
I have got a new book and also you better give me things to write.
Same here.
And a new pen.
Oh, Uttamam.
Namaste, Anu.
Oh, namaste, Vasanji. Kushalam.
Thank you.
So the what will be insisted on is to do the writing in the mind, like the ancient rishis did.
Ancient rishis didn't have brand new notebooks.
No, they might have had. They didn't have the brand new one, but they had the whole philosophy which was different. Pustakastha ya vidya. You know that there is a very nice one. You know that shloka. It says,
No.
It says Pustakastha ya vidya, the knowledge that is there in the books. Parapasta gatam dhanam, the money that has your money but in somebody else's hand. Prapte tu sampadi kale, nasa vidya natad dhanam. So when you really need it, that money, not that knowledge is of any direct use. They use the mastaka pustakam. They fully exploited mastaka pustakam.
Anu, share this Subhashita, this thing with us.
So I'll be sharing all these things. There'll be quite a lot of them actually. So what we'll do is today we'll just start maybe 5 minutes. I'll just let everybody come in since it's the first day. And then I think what we can try doing is try and log in maybe at least 10 minutes in advance so that we can make sure that we start. Then we can finish on time also. Otherwise, we will be losing time. Just try to, get as many in.
It's good to see the Indica Yoga mat.
Nice logo, no?
Yeah.
I will introduce Subramanian ji. They do phenomenal work at the Satya Sai organization with promotion of Sanskrit, with the promotion of mantra learning. Amazing work.
I also meant the one behind you, which we have been seeing on Indica Yoga for such a long time.
Satyam. That's a nice one.
Love beyond words.
Satyam. Can you read all of it?
Half only the lower part.
Satyam. That's because of the way I am sitting.
That's good. Yes.
Pashatu?
Very nice. Live every moment, laugh every day, love beyond words. That's you. So it's nice. The other side I've got a beautiful Om. So front and back well looked after.
Shall
Well covered.
should we all mute and remove our videos?
Once we start. Right now, it's nice if everybody wants to just say hello. It's a big group. It's not possible for everybody, but if anybody wants to just do a hello to it, whoever.
Hello.
That's
Hello.
Namaste.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should start now because, yeah.
No,
Start,
I'll
yeah.
give
Because
another
it's,
2 minutes. Sarati,
Okay.
just another 2 minutes. I mean, I'll start at 5, just for today.
Okay.
Then I'll try and be more punctual in terms of the starting.
yeah. Then we'll all join about 5 or 10 minutes in advance.
Satyam.
Washing machine, but yeah.
You've got 111 participants now.
Satyam.
That's half the number. Half the number.
Yeah, all
Hello,
good
ma'am.
numbers. Namaste. Who's there? Hello, ma'am.
I'm Amba.
Namaste, ma'am. Namaste.
Ma'am, so nice to see you, ma'am. I followed both your courses on NPTEL and loved Sanskrit.
Oh, Tamam.
Yeah, I was waiting for your next advanced level course as well, but right now you are taking up this. I'm so happy to see you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your. I said,
so much.
I'll request you to repeat this when everybody comes, and they'll feel enthused.
Hi, Anu.
Hi, Namaste. How are you?
Good.
You got good.
I'm calling from Bangalore, you know that.
Yes. Shimyanka's from the army. He was with Daddy, so we've got a few people from different places joining in. Oh, big privilege.
Hi, everyone.
Chalatu.
Hi, Kaushi.
Hello. I am Dwarkanath from Madras, madam.
Namaste ji. Namaste.
Namaste. I am a layman with regard to the Sanskrit. So,
there are
it
many.
will take some days for me to pick up, madam. Please bear with me.
Not at all, not to worry. We have many in this thing. So we are it is a basic class. So not to worry at all. This is really meant, we are really going to start from scratch. Okay, so I think I'll start now.
Okay. Madam.
Is my friend.
Can you see me?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes, madam.
Okay, I guess we lost her. I'm admitting her.
So we'll start with whoever's there.
Hello, madam.
Okay.
Not able to.
Namaste, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, madam.
Yes, we can hear you clear.
Lovely. So I request, just as a thing, Sundareshan, are you there, please?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you come on, can you show your video on, please?
Okay.
So we've got
Madam, yes, madam. I am Dwarkanath from Madras.
Yes. Yeah, so we've just got Sundareshan who will be doing all the, giving me the technical support, and he's logging in as Vinay Chandra, but the name is actually Sundareshan. So he's the one who's helping for all the technical stuff, a long-term friend, very long-time friend now. So what we'll do, Sundar, if I can request you to please do the admitting into the room. Huh? Okay. We'll start, we'll get everybody in. We'll start. And very typically, we'll start a class by reciting the Om 3 times. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Harihi Om, and then Atha. So I have a request that everybody please put your mics.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Yeah, please.
Vishnu. Devo Maheshwara. Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
One second.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Everybody please listen to me. I request you to kindly mute your mics. Everybody please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Dwaraka ji, please mute your mic. Please mute your mic. Dwaraka ji, please mute your mic.
I have to bring it down, is it?
Not bring it. Can you mute your mic? Sundar, can you mute everybody's
Yeah.
mic, please, as a host? Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to invite all of you to do it together with me. So I'll be the only one that you can hear, but please do it on your own. And I request you to do it with this gesture of namaste. And the gesture of namaste is so that the right palm has nerve endings connected to the left brain lobe. The left palm has nerve endings connected to the right brain lobe. So when we put our hands together, then it will, then it energizes the entire system, all the nerve endings get energized by that process. All right. So I request you to please join your hands and close your eyes. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Atha So namaste and Hardika Swagatam to everybody who's here. As I mentioned to you, that this class is a bit of an exploratory one, where we are going to try and understand a few aspects about Sanskrit. So the main objective of this class is not just to present Sanskrit as a language of communication, but to really try and connect to the very spirit of this language. And how do we connect to the spirit of this language? This language has certain very unique features, and also because of the source of this language itself. So what we will try and do in this, in the course of our study, is to try and see how much we are able to allow the experience of this language to fill our being. At the same time, learning the grammar of it, and also understanding that this is a very precious tool to give us direct access to a lot of very valuable material that has formed the very foundations of our civilization, and many other cultures that have emerged from within this larger ambit of the Bharatiya Darshanam. So, like I said, I'll try and do it first more as a monologue. If you have questions, please raise your hand and unmute and you can speak. But to optimize on the time we have, I suggest that I will try and do as much of sharing as possible. And just in today's context, towards the end, maybe around 10 minutes, I will stop the class and I'll give you the details about how the course will be run. Because there are many of you who are coming here for the first time. So I'll share with you how I'm planning the classes and why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. Okay, so let us start. I had very recently done this talk on Sanskrit as a yoga and for yoga. And that is because of my personal experience in delving into this language and discovering the fact that the language in itself has these yogic components. And if you go beyond that, you also start recognizing that both yoga and Sanskrit are based on a certain worldview. So I had prepared a certain PPT that I used for my talk in the Global Festival. And I'm going to be using that same PPT as the skeleton of what I'm going to share. All right. And on that, I will be building per class different aspects of it. So the very first thing that we would need to discuss is about the worldview that Sanskrit is representing. What is the underlying vision of the world, and therefore what are the insights it offers to us? So I was very recently also proposing this for Speaking Tree, but I was saying that we don't just speak languages, but languages also speak to us. And every language has its unique story. That story pertains to the words that it uses because it is a particular insight into this incredible creation that we are part of. And what is that worldview that it is connecting us to? All right. So with Sanskrit, I will start my PPT sharing also. So, the story of language is very much the story of sounds and vibrations. And what do we mean by that? The basis of the human languages we use is sound itself. But what is the relationship of that sound with the rest of creation? And when we go back to the very core of sound itself, we realize that everything ultimately in the universe is nothing but energy. And therefore, if it is energy, it is a vibrating energy. If it is vibrations, it is some form of sound or the other. So one of the very important aspects of our investigation, exploration into this dimension of Sanskrit is to look at the world as being a world of sounds and vibrations. And in that connection, we start understanding how the different letters of this language is formed, how the words are formed, how the grammar evolves therein. But when we look at the entire universe as nothing but energy, which is also what science tells us, the main difference between the two is that when we talk about sounds and energy in the Indian context, this underlying energy stuff is a conscious energy. It has three characteristics. So the first characteristic of this energy is that it is. It is an undeniable existence. It is. But its being is also characterized by the quality of a self-awareness. Okay, so the fact that it exists is that it is Sat, and therefore the word Sat itself comes from the root Sanskrit root as, which means to be. Sat very literally means being. Okay. So everything is. And therefore a classical difference with philosophies that talk that there is nothing at the source. From this Vedic perspective, the world is founded on something that is. And it is a conscious entity. If it is a conscious entity, then whatever is created from there is intrinsically conscious. And therefore, because it is intrinsically conscious, it is knowable. This sequence is a very, very important feature of the approach of the Indic worldview. And it underlies everything that follows. The fact that it is conscious implies that it has structures, it has conscious structures, and that it is therefore knowable. And that knowability, because it is knowable, that knowability can happen through different entry points. There is no monopoly about one way of knowing this, for the simple reason that its manifestations are myriad. And therefore one can literally catch any thread and go back to that source by catching that thread. Okay, so this is it. And then because we talked about sounds, these sounds are also, and you look at the whole universe as being nothing but various vibrations, everything is having a simultaneous impact on everything else. The extent of impact is determined by the proximity and the intensity of that source vibration. But it is undeniable that we are being impacted by this vibratory world that we are ourselves. and that we are surrounded by. We are immersed in vibrations. And therefore, we are impacting that, and those things are impacting us. So I thought right at the beginning, we will do one sound. And that sound, I would invite you to try and do an experience of that sound. All right. And why? Because the moment we are producing a sound, that sound is touching things. And therefore, as conscious beings, we have the possibility of consciously capturing the impact of that sound. You see, at a physical level, we are vibrations very densely put together. At the emotional level, at the pranic level, it's a little more loosened out. At a mental level, it is even more spaced out, very literally. So when that one vibration is having its impact, it is creating its specific effect at all levels. So we see this very evidently with music. So when you listen to music, physically you feel a certain response to that. Emotionally there is a response. So some music, for example, can make you feel physically excited. There are other music that are spontaneously quietening. There are some music, some kinds of music that you listen to that will make us feel emotionally very, either sad or happy, or, different kinds of emotions are evoked. Mentally also, different kinds of music evoke different different images. So I had this very clearly when I was first time abroad and somebody was playing the sitar, and just the very sounds of that music brought me home. So the sounds of anything is also associated with images, the meanings that are associated with sounds. Those sounds in music are not confined to a particular meaning. Whereas in language, the sound of particular words are attributed specific meanings. But the point is that this is really important for us to understand, that sound is associated with meaning. The sound of a word is associated with meaning, but the sound of a word also gives meaning, gives experience. That is very important to catch. And therefore, in languages like English and different languages as well, if I tell you the word peace, the word peace can correspond to peace of mind, and it is written with a particular script, with a particular spelling. But you can also say a piece of cake, and that piece of cake sounds like peace, but it is written differently, and therefore it will create a different effect. So I'm just getting a message that is saying that this meeting will end in 10 minutes. I'm wondering what that means, but we'll just see. In case it ends, please click on the link again and we'll join again. All right. So we'll just take it as it goes. Okay. So we have arrived at this point where we have said that the sound of a word can correspond to meanings associated, but the sounds of word directly can give meaning. So the question is, where does the word begin? The word can also begin with a single letter. The single letter is the origin of word. And it's in that context that the Om becomes something that is important to discuss. But what we do now is that I would like you to do the sound Ah. So I'd like everybody to close their eyes and to allow your being. So there will be a very strong experiential component with these classes. So I would like you to just allow yourself to relax and try to make the sound Ah. And as you make the sound Ah, I'd like you to just become conscious of what is the action that you feel like spontaneously doing. So if I can ask you all, if you want to keep your videos open on, it's great, because this is a very personal experience. So I'd like you to close your eyes and just do the sound Ah as freely as you can, and see what kind of action does it correspond to at a physical level. What kind of an emotion does it evoke? All right, I want you to focus on these two aspects. So now I request you to close your eyes and we'll do the sound Ah. And I will also mute myself so that you are not influenced by my Ah. Okay, so do it as freely as you can. So take a deep breath and start. Everybody, please mute your mics because it will otherwise interfere with others. So request you all to kindly make sure that your sound is muted, not unmuted. Muted. Please make sure that your sounds are muted. Girish, Shiv, Uncle, I think your sound is unmuted. Please mute. Yes, everybody mute. So I'd like you again to do it. Do it once more. Mute your sounds. All right. I have muted everybody. Please don't touch your screens now. I'd like you to do it once more. And this time I'd like you to just observe what is the emotion it corresponds to. So do it as freely as you can and just observe what emotion does it correspond to. Do it as freely as you can. All right. Now I'd like you to just on the chat mention what was your experience. What did you feel like doing? Or if you can just show me, even if you can show me, what was the action that you felt like doing spontaneously? What action came to you when you did the R? Anybody? Singing, sense of freedom, joining hands, relaxation, peace, possibility, expansive, open.
Freedom.
Heart,
Elevation.
elevation, yes.
Vastness.
Yes.
Relaxation.
Actually, I feel quite comfortable from all around, no sound effect, simply
all right.
Relaxed.
All right. And emotionally, what would it have felt like?
Peace.
Peaceful.
Peace.
All right.
Floating.
Peace.
Floating.
Floating. Calmness. Okay. All right. So I'll move on. So I'll tell you abundance. Yes, absolutely. So one of the feelings that the sound R corresponds to is the sound of freedom. So can you imagine what is one of the main emotions that would arise when you have a sense of absolute freedom? What would be a very
Happiness.
Yes, happiness. So you see, yes. So when we do the sound R, if you look into the Shastras, it says that it is the very first sound that the human vocal instrument can produce. And in the Gita, Krishna says of the letters, I am the A. Why the A? Because of the entire sound structure, that entire spectrum of possible sounds. A is the very first one. And because A is the very first one, it represents existence itself. What kind of existence? An unconditioned existence. So if you do an very spontaneously, you will see that the hands will tend to open up. It will not be constricted. So the sound R corresponds to absolute existence. So it is. And more so, it is a conscious R. Again, I will request everyone to please mute their sounds. Please, this class is also a lot about consciousness. Mute your sounds. All right. So when we do the R spontaneously, then when you do the R, then there is a sense of expansion and there is a consciousness to it. And you see that when there is unconditioned existence, the spontaneous emotion that arises from there is joy. And therefore, when we talk of the underlying energy as being Sat, that underlying energy is Chit, it is conscious, but that underlying energy, just by the fact of being Sat and Chit, is naturally blissful. The blissful component is not an extra, not an added feature to this. It is the spontaneous outcome of unconditional being. And therefore, when we do the in the Mandukya, the entire Mandukya Upanishad, and we have a lot of members from the Sunad group in the Mandukya who have done a program on the Mandukya Upanishad and the Santavani that is absolutely worth seeing. So when we are doing the in the Mandukya Upanishad, they say that the sound is the sound of an unlimited being. And it says that one who experiences that will have no desires. That's the consequence of that. And how? Because when we have that absolute expansion, if you are everything, then where is desire? Desire emerges from the sense of an absence of something. But if one is everything, then there is no question of an absence, and therefore spontaneously joy. So when we make the sound the sound is a bit identity card in sounds. The quality, and this is important to understand, that sounds that we produce are sounds that come out from our system. And because they come out of our system, every single vibration is conditioned by the internal atmosphere of our being. And therefore, when you have this conditioning of the internal atmosphere, what comes out becomes revelatory of the kind of space that is inside us. And in this context, I will just go on to the next slide. And in this next slide, I have tried to depict it. There are many things on this slide, but I will maybe just a little bit touch upon it, but I will not make it too complicated. We will look at this in greater detail as we move on. But for the first class, I just wanted you to understand that this, if you can see my cursor, that topmost is what represents our Anandamaya Kosha, that which is spontaneous and is. That is what becomes more dense into our physical being, a little more light into the emotional, the mind, and then the Vijnana Maya, which has the blueprint of the, ideal, and it is aware of the manifested. Don't go into that right now, because but the reason I showed you is because our internal all right, I think we'll continue. Whoever else will join, I will make sure they're. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes.
We can hear you. Yes.
Yes, we can hear.
Yes.
Okay.
We can hear, ma'am.
All right, so I'll start. So as I was saying that the sounds we produce are, I'll share my screen as well. So what I'll do is I will just share I'll just make a new drawing of it so that it is clear for everybody what I mean. Right. So like I was saying that we have at a physical level, it's like that. At an emotional level, it's a little more spaced out. At a mental level, a little more. Then at Vijnana Maya, it's a little more, and at Anandamaya, it's like that. And it's the Anandamaya that has become all these layers, okay? You will excuse the... So when I'm showing that, it's because to say that it is that underlying consciousness that has become everything. Now, normally, if it is in this form, then there is no problem because everything is aligned and everything is harmonious. And not just that, when it is aligned, then the sound that comes out is the most powerful. So this is another very important concept to understand before we continue, is the notion in the Sanskrit context. They talk of a few things. So they talk of something called the para, para, which means the beyond. And what we mean by beyond is it means that it is the unconditioned state of existence of anything. So it is, in a sense, it is beyond any kind of distortion. That's one way of looking at it. Okay, and then you have the next level called pashyanti. Pashyanti, which means the seeing. Then we have the third one, which belongs really to this region. It belongs to this zone, and this part is known as Madhyama, Madhyama, or the middle, or the medium. So that's Madhyama, the middle part, okay, Madhyama. And the final one is Vaikhari, or the expressed word, expressed sound. So these are the 4 layers of sound when we talk of speech. These are the 4 layers of speech. Now the thing is that if the beyond is there, if all of this is not muddled up, so what I mean by muddled up is this alternative, where the vibratory patterns are emotions, that's the mind, and then we have the Vijnana that is pretty much untouched, and the Anandamaya that remains untouched. All right, so when we talk of this, so you can imagine, so when we talk of the world as sounds, it means that all these things, because vibration exists in the para, things exist. And we as human beings are manifestors of these sounds. This is a very core idea to get. Okay, and therefore you see that even musicians and all, they hear the sounds. And therefore the origin of the Sanskrit language, which is in the Vedas, where these sounds were revealed. They were revealed through a certain contemplative mind. And that mind was undisturbed. It did not have the noise of the inner being. And therefore what was seen is what was uttered. And when that happens, then there is a resonance that happens at all the levels. And when that resonance happens, then the sound that comes out is like a laser, because it has alignments at all levels of being. The moment we talk of alignments, we start going into the realm of yoga. Yoga is nothing but it's uniting what? Uniting all of this with what is on top. And it is also the process of alignments. So how do we align? How do we make this involuntary noise into a voluntary harmony? So this whole movement from the involuntary to the voluntary is one of the key aspects of the yogic tradition at all levels, at the physical level through Hatha Yoga, at the emotional level through Bhakti Yoga, at a mental level through Jnana Yoga. When you combine at the level of the sounds, the subtles through Nada Yoga, the combination of all of that together as Raja Yoga. Okay, so all this is nothing but the process. The main emphasis or the main thrust of yoga is how do we go from involuntary to voluntary. And now from there we start moving into language. So when we are moving into language, the first thing is to recognize that we are instruments of the sounding of reality. In normal contexts, we believe that we are producers of language. And most languages are shaped from that origin, from the concept that we are at this level, we are mental beings. And because we are mental beings, we can put we can put sounds in a particular order to create meaning, to generate meaning. But the completely different way of looking at the story is that sounds exist, meaningful sounds exist. Can we capture that, and then what do we produce? And because, like I said, that production of meaning is not with the coupling of sounds, it also starts from independent singular sounds. And in that context, the sound A, which represents the sound of existence itself. So if I had to put A would be a little bit the sound of this vibratory, original, unconditioned vibratory thing. Okay. And the other aspect about this was that in music, for example, I know that in the Drupad tradition and in different other music traditions, they emphasize on the need to do the R correctly. They start with the R. Why? Because if we can become hearers of the free R, then automatically this space gets cleaned up. And this space here will start getting cleaned up because this becomes a listening. So if you start looking at language as not the making of sound, but the listening of sounds, it changes certain things quite fundamentally. And therefore, when we are doing the R, we can use the R as a mirror of reflecting what is happening in our inner being. I'll give you an example. So if you have an R which is which picture, what image would it correspond to? Would it correspond to this or would it correspond to that? And automatically you hear that the is corresponding to an R which is coming out from an atmosphere that is quite muddled up. And therefore this muddled up vibratory pattern is what we also can call dis-ease in a sense, where things are not in their right place. Everything is out of place. And because it is out of place, it is a bit like a puzzle where if the pieces are not correctly fit, that puzzle also becomes susceptible to be broken. So fragility also emerges from greater degrees of dissonance within our system. And all of this is just coming out from the understanding of the relationship of the different vibrations of our being. And therefore, what do we need to move towards from this involuntary state of our condition of our inner being to a more voluntary, to a more harmonious? How do we do it? Like I was saying, physically through Hatha, and it's Hatha yoga, please. Emotionally through Bhakti and mentally through Jnana. When there is an alignment through the body, when you're doing Hatha yoga, it's an alignment of the prana. You're allowing the prana to move in the body in a particular manner to allow maximum flexibility and nourishment. You see, if you have a sound structure that is all like that, it also loses its flexibility. So if you have a puzzle piece that is very nicely fit, even that puzzle becomes a bit malleable and it is indestructible. I mean, it's more difficult to destroy that. Okay, so when we are through Hatha yoga using our prana, very importantly, then it is allowing these spaces to get more regulated within us. When those spaces are regulated, so if you look at this image, you see that the breathing in this is not it'll be short breathing, it will not be a very smoothened breathing. Whereas in this, the breathing, I mean, you'll have to just excuse the fact that the drawing is not perfect, but the breathing will be far more far more ample in its own way. All right. The other thing is in terms of light and darkness. So in this kind of a muddled thing, there is greater extent of darkness in that. And why darkness? Because everything is muddled up. So the relationship between the different parts of our being, there is no clarity. Mental confusion, emotional confusion, physically unfit. Whereas if you move on to this, then it reflects greater degrees of health and well-being. How does this happen? We can go bottom up, where we are working by trying to straighten up each of this at its own level, or we can enter into a state of great receptivity. So there is a great amount of relaxation. And in that relaxation of our entire being, the sounds of the unconditioned self will reflect. And when that reflects, then the expression also becomes more spontaneous and more true. Okay. And there is more power in it, because now it is being able to express itself in alignment with everything. So we become more laser-like. Okay, and then so when I was doing the R for you, the first R was the other R was So you just hear the difference. So the sound R becomes like our identity card in sound. And it is our identity card, so it is diagnostic. It can give us a very good idea of what is our present condition. It's not that it's always the same, but what is our present condition? And at the same time, it is therapeutic. Why therapeutic? Because we are not, when we are producers of the sound, it is diagnostic. When we become receivers of the sound and allow the sound to manifest. So what it would imply is to listen to the freedom of your being. So I'm combining an image with a sound. So the freedom of your being corresponds to a sound. Listen to that sound and produce it and see what that does to you. So we'll do this other exercise now where I'd like you to close your eyes and I'd like you to visualize that you're on top of the mountain or you're in any plane where you know you're not afraid of heights or anything, any open space, and that you're not adults. You're completely free children. Some might have had a painful childhood and all. Don't get into that. Just imagine yourself as a free child and then do the sound up. So I'd like you all to really do this experiment. So visualize that you are in this freedom of your being as a young child and that you're in a beautiful, open, free space and you're just expressing the joy of your existence. Do it. All right. If you would just like to again share, what did your sound change or was it the same as before? Did you notice a difference? If you'd like to add it on the chat, what was your difference?
More louder.
More loud? Yes.
Yeah.
Relaxed, higher pitch, interesting. Changed to
there was more calmness now.
More calmness now. All right. So now what is again amazing is that one has not gone to the mountain, one has not gone anywhere, but just we have opened up a certain image. We have opened up a small window in our mind of our own existence and we have discovered a different sound. Okay, mostly the sound would be different if you've done it fully, if you've allowed yourself to get into the visualization in a very real manner. There would be a sudden opening up of the sound. And that, like I said, because...
Math's not clear. Audio is clear.
Is my sound clear now? Is it better? All right. So because we have opened up an image in our head, the sound changes. And therefore, the sound is the fact that it can allow us to act as also a therapy for ourselves. And because it is acting as a therapy, it can allow us to open up different realms, and therefore it is also a mantra. It's in fact the first mantra, just the sound ah. When I'm saying first, I'm not taking the om. We'll talk about the om. All right, but the sound ah becomes important to understand, and there are many things that have been revealed just through the discovery or the exploration of the sound ah. And one is that our condition of being is determined by our mental concepts. Our existence has been conditioned by our environment, by who we think of ourselves, our self-image, all of that. All of that has an impact on how we become in our lives. And one of the direct takeaways from this particular experience is the fact that the degree of spontaneous joy we experience is directly proportionate to the perceived freedom of our being. So the degree of the joy that we experience is directly connected to or directly related to the degree of the unconditioned state of our existence. And the sound ah captures that incredibly. Okay. So what I would probably request, because I had promised that I will stop a little earlier today and just tell you a little more about the class. But then you start recognizing that the sound ah is the very first sound the entire human vocal instrument is special because it is only in this range that we can capture all the sounds of creation. And therefore, just remember this much, that this sound, this range is important. And every sound in that is a producer of experience as well. And therefore, language is not always only for communication. Language can also be a source of creation of experiences, not just a mentalized, but by the sounds of the language. And that is the hallmark of the Sanskrit language, which is further captured by the tradition of the Nada Yoga or the mantra tradition, which is nothing but systematized sound technology, which says that sounds have been spontaneously placed in such a manner that they will necessarily create its desired effects at different levels of our being. And how does that happen? Because the source of the mantra is an unmediated source. And thereby, by reproducing those sounds in the silence of our being as much as possible, we can get back, like I said initially, that since it is conscious, you can withdraw everything back to the original source. And that is also one example that is used in the Upanishad of creation being like a spider that is making its web, and then it withdraws its entire creation into itself. And you see how that becomes a reality just from a very sound perspective. A sound perspective with a pun on the term sound. Astu. Okay, so I hope this is clear. This idea of the para, pashyanti, madhyama and vaikhari. And one last thing here is that this framework, that there is an ideal, there is a connection with the ideal, there is a translation of that ideal, and there is an expression of that ideal. If at any level there is no consonance or there is not a connection, a good connection, then what will be produced is necessarily a distortion. And therefore this can be, this is one of the foundational frameworks of Indic worldview. And it works in every context. It works in the context of, let's say, if you're trying to do music. So I tell people, I say, for example, I have a good ear for music, but the production of my sound is not necessarily faithful to what I can hear. And that is because there's not been enough training, the instrument is not whatever worked on, or but the fact that one can hear it means that if you can train yourself, you can also reproduce it. This works for sculpture. So that sculpture is perfect, where the sculptor has been able to see. They say, the sculptor says they can see the image in the stone. So there is really this component of seeing and hearing, which is again what are characteristic features of the Vedic tradition itself. The Vedas were seen and heard, and therefore the rishis, the seer, was a mantra drashtaraha. He was the seer of the mantras, and he was a mantra shrotaraha. So the original sounds of this language were captured by a seeing, and therefore they have the intrinsic value of revealing when they are produced. And therefore there is this whole quality of consciousness with every single utterance of this language. And we will explore that as we go down. But for now, I will stop sharing. And what I would like to do is just, I suggest that everyone stays muted. So what I will do now is I will just talk to you about the class itself, how I've conceived it, because if you can understand it and do it as I'm proposing, then you will get a very, very decent level of this language by the end of December. So I'm sort of trying to fast track your progress a little bit. But you need not also take it. So I'll just tell you how I'm planning it. So this is a 20-hour lecture. We had given the option of certification, which I will talk about. So this is a 20-hour lecture, of which 10 hours will deal more with the theory of the yogic vision of Sanskrit. And I will also share tips on how to understand the grammatical structures of this language. Because it is emerging from a certain worldview, it also has conscious structures in its expression. So I'll try and make that transition for you from philosophy into the language itself. And then simultaneously, I will encourage you to start doing the 10 hours introduction to basic spoken Sanskrit class that is already available on NPTEL. That course has recently been offered officially, and therefore you will not be able to formally register for it, or get the course material, assignments, write exams, etc. But I will make the course material available for you, so that you have a support for the lessons that you are learning. So that's 10 hours. So 10 hours with me here and 10 hours of that. And that's how I'm seeing this 20 hours completed, which is, if you had followed it as a course, it would correspond to a 4-week course, which is just in time for us to start to enroll yourself, which I would really recommend that you enroll in any case. So everybody who has joined here, please enroll in any case for the intermediate level. The advantage of enrolling formally would be that you will get all the course material, you will get regular reminders, email reminders of the videos that are being released. You will get the course content, you will get the assignments that are there, you will have access to the discussion forums, and for those who are keen to go on to writing the exams, they can go ahead and do so, which would lead to a formal certification if you pass. Okay, so if you start today with the basic spoken Sanskrit introduction, which I will again share in the group, then move on to doing the 20-hour intermediate level officially, then by the end of December, because it's a 20-hour, it corresponds to a 2-month course. By the end of December, you will be very well positioned. Like honestly, you will have a very good understanding of the language, broad frameworks, and there are many who are on this group also who have done it and who have been very kind enough to join here, because I was going to talk of another dimension of the language as well. So that will be covered. So, but for those who would find it difficult to engage themselves so much with Sanskrit at the moment, both the basic and the intermediate are likely to be clubbed together for an official course that will be offered from January onwards, the following semester. So that will be a 30-hour course that you can enroll for. And the semester after that, I'm planning to do the advanced level. So the advanced level, I'll try and capture the other things that have been left out in these 2 courses. So in terms of course content, this is how it would unfold. In terms of the Guru Dakshina or fees that many of you have been talking about, I was at some point, initially I started this off independently. At some point, there was a possibility of doing it on the Indica Yoga platform. But because they had certain requirements and I had other requirements, I'm doing this again independently, but using their connection. But because it is happening independently, I have my sincere request to all of you is that please at least make it a point to teach one more person Sanskrit. So what you hear here, and as you're learning the language, as you're learning the language also, please try and teach at least one other person this language. So that for me, by teaching maybe 130 or 200 people, I will already automatically reach out to 200 people and share the material with them. I have really no problem. Share the content with them so that everybody can benefit. With Sanskrit, the more the merrier, for reasons you will discover as we go down. Okay. And but still there were some who were wanting to contribute to this cause of the promotion of Sanskrit. So I am planning to make a tie-up with Gurukulams that I have benefited from personally, and that you must visit, at least in Bangalore, which have, they have a girls Gurukulam near Sringeri, they have another boys Gurukulam of 100 children each. And they have this other Gurukulam in Bangalore itself, Veda Vijnana Gurukulam, of about more than 50 boys, young boys from all over the country. It's a post+2, so it's a higher education of 6 to 7 years. and they are dedicated to the promotion of Sanskrit, the Shastras. So they engage in deep study of Shastras, and many of them are brilliant scholars as well, young and brilliant scholars. And all of this education, wherever it is happening for free. So society supports them. So for those of you who would like to contribute to this effort that is being put in here, I will make a provision with them so that you can contribute to this cause and help them also do their work with less constraints on finances, etc. Okay, so that is about Guru Dakshina. But for me personally, because at the end of the day, if you're getting something, it's also nice to give back. So my request for you,
Please share details, madam. Please share details
sorry,
of how to send by way of NEFT or RTGS. Please send bank details and.
Varkanaji, I will make all those details available. Okay, so as soon as I have clarity, it will happen most probably.
Sorry to disturb you, madam. Sorry to disturb you.
By the time I have clarity this week, you will be able to, by next week you will know how to do it if you want to do it. So that you do it in whichever way. I mean, I'll let you know if there are fixed amounts that you can do it through that. We can see which way we can do it best. All right. So this is what I thought would be an important beginning for this class, and we'll keep the discussions going. My request again is that please in the group, I have no problem with if people are affiliated to political parties, if the message they're giving is about Sanskrit, and the focus would be really about Sanskrit. So let us look beyond even our own limitations. Let us look beyond our lenses of what we like and what we don't like, which is another call of the yogic tradition, that how can we move beyond the sways of our raga, our attachments and preferences and dveshas, of our dislikes and aversions. So can we move beyond the sways, and if Sanskrit is being presented, let's see if we can take the Sanskrit. And therefore, I encourage sharing of Sanskrit and Sanskrit related content. For those of you who are already well versed in Sanskrit, please don't already start talking in Sanskrit, because those who do know nothing would feel left out. Try and initially at least limit the conversation to direct content related discussions. Because if I have to curtail your freedom in expression and make it only admin share, I think it will also take away from the wealth that all of you have in your own domains. So I'm keeping it open so that you can bring in your rich resources in terms of, like I said, Sanskrit and Sanskriti related. So anything to do with Indian. So like I've got fantastic videos on what Vastu Shastra is all about, things like that. So if you have those kind of contents, post, but also let us be sensitive at the same time that we are not over posting. So limit the amount of postings that you're doing, so that the important sharings are not lost in the process. Okay, so let's do this with a lot of sensitivity and consciousness. That would really be my very humble request to everybody on this group. And more than anything else, really to study it with the joy that this language has for us. So I think this is the last thing that I will say for now, is this idea that the bliss that our yogis experienced is because they were able to move from being conditioned beings to connecting with unconditioned realities within themselves. So one can use language as an important tool to touch that truth. And beyond language, thoughts also are sounds, emotions are sounds, our physical movements, actions are sounds. So how can we try and do these so that they become more and more unconditioned and spontaneous? And you will see that the experience of joy will be a spontaneous phenomenon and not something that you have to struggle for. So I think with these few words, thank you all for your very encouraging, yes, and that I think Taradhi is also making an important point. that next time I will request Sundareshan if possible to, we'll all try and open up the joining at about 6:50 or 6:55. So Sundar, what is possible for you?
Yeah, 6:55 should be possible.
6:55. So we'll open it up at 6:55 so that you can come in, then you can have a little bit of conversation also between yourselves. As we start Sanskrit, it'll be great that you start trying to speak it. So do the spoken Sanskrit side by side, please. And we will then connect with, try and start at 7 o'clock. And right now to close, we'd like to close, and we'll also stop after half an hour or so to start again. No, we are not going to do that. We are going to have a continuous one. Not to worry, we are not going to have this stopping. We're going to have a full-time thing. All right. So what I'd like you all to do before you leave, so don't get leave, because we'd like to close. So we start every session with the recognition of what we owe to our gurus. And we will always end with a conscious prayer of what we give back to the world. And what do we give back to the world? We give back to the world the best that we are capable of at all levels. So we'll end with the chant of Om, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. So Loka, meaning all the worlds that we have looked at, Samasta, all, Sukhino, happy, Bhavantu, be. So Loka, Samasta, and this again we'll try and make the connection so that when we are saying these words, we are meaning these words and we are thinking these prayers. And we'll end with Om Shanti at the 3 levels. So at the physical level Shanti, at the emotional level Shanti, the spiritual, the subtle level, and the spiritual level Shanti, so that all 3 levels become quiet and we become an incarnation of peace. Just before we go into it, a last piece of information was that we are doing these classes on Monday 7 to 8. I'll try and be correct with the 1 hour thing. The second thing is that we will meet on the last Sunday of the month from 3 to 4 or 4:30, depends on what people are open to. So 3 to 4 is what I would say, just the last Sunday, so that in 2 months we can complete the 10 hours for this and the site. All right. So I request everybody to join, to repeat after me if you are not already familiar once, and then together we will say the Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. But most important is to try and get this alignment behind the words. And the world needs this enlightened vibrations more than ever before. Let's make our conscious contribution to that as this group that is here. Chalo. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Iti. Dhanyavadaha Punarmilamaha. So I'll write that down. Dhanyavadaha. Somebody had asked me that question and I will also answer that. So Dhanyavadaha. I think Jayashiji had asked me that question. Dhanyavadaha. The answer.
Repeat again, please.
I'm writing it. Astu Dhanya Vadaha. So dhanyavadaha is thank you. And it literally is thank you in a sense, but dhanya means wealthy, to be wealthy. Dhanyavada is wishing. These, one is the sense of feeling wealthy by having received, but the other one is when you're saying dhanyavada, it is also wishing the other person to be more wealthy. Because that person has given, and if that person has given, we wish them more wealth, to be greater givers, and we be enriched by that process as well. And astu dhanyavada means so be it. May these words be true. Astu dhanyavada. And punar milamaha, again we will meet. Astu shubham.
About
Ratrihi. A few words. Shubha Ratrihi.
Arya, about Punar Mila Maha. You say Punar Mila Maha, that is Lot Lakar. If we cut the Visarga, it becomes Lot Lakar.
Yes. No, it's the other way around. It's the other way.
Huh?
When you say Punar Mila Maha,
That
then
is Lot.
present tense. We are meeting again.
It is Lot Lakar.
It literally means we are meeting again.
Huh.
And when you say Punar Mila Ma, it means
Then it's Lot.
again.
Then it's Lot Lakar.
Yes, yes. It's an imperative, yes.
So, are both forms okay? Or
Yeah, both forms are fine.
both forms are fine.
Yes, yes. And we also do the aha. We'll discover the beauty of this aspirated sounds of the Sanskrit language.
Yep.
Also, loka, samasta, sukhino, bhavantu. So, practice that. And Shubharatri.
Shivaratri, Sarvam Mangalam Bhavatu.
Shubhratri. Take care. Bye.
Dhanyavad.
Thank you very much, ma'am.